Right now, corporate boardrooms all over the world are, well, they're quietly drawing up these massive restructuring
Oh
plans.
yeah, freezing hiring, prepping for what they think is this inevitable wave of mass layoffs.
Exactly. They are absolutely convinced that artificial intelligence is about to just step in, replace their entire white-collar workforce, and usher in this era of perfectly smooth, human-free profit margins.
Right, which sounds great on paper.
It does. But according to the frontier researchers who are actually building these AI systems and, looking at the hard US labor data, the boardrooms are completely wrong.
Totally wrong.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to cut through the panic and the hype. We're looking at a highly comprehensive analysis by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's titled Frontier AI Research versus Boardroom Dogma: Why the Labor Replacement Narrative Misreads the Evidence.
It's a fantastic paper.
Yeah, and we want to equip you with the actual facts about how AI is reshaping the workforce so you aren't just, reacting to the scary headlines. So, okay, let's unpack this because the disconnect between the executives making the rules and the reality on the ground is just staggering.
It really is. What's fascinating here is just how heavily executives are relying on assumptions rather than empirical evidence. I mean, you have this entrenched boardroom dogma driving massive strategic decisions right now.
Right, like they see a demo and just jump to conclusions.
Exactly. They assume that if an AI can write, a functional paragraph or generate a snippet of code, it can therefore just do the entire job of a copywriter or a software engineer.
Which is a huge leap.
A massive leap.
Yeah.
But when you look at the 2024 labor data, or when you read the studies coming out of the AI labs themselves, you realize that technology just doesn't behave that way when it makes contact with a real organization.
Yeah, and getting this wrong doesn't just hurt the employees, right? It actively damages the companies making the mistake.
Oh, severely.
So I want to understand the mechanics of that mistake. Because to figure out why the boardroom myth is failing, we have to define what this technology is actually doing in the office. The sources point to a really crucial distinction that we need to lay out here.
Augmentation versus replacement.
Yes, exactly. Augmentation versus replacement.
That distinction is basically the bedrock of the entire discussion. We really have to separate those two concepts because they create completely different economic realities.
Right. So let's start with replacement.
Okay, so a labor-replacing technology is designed to take a task previously done by a human, automate it entirely, and require basically zero ongoing human involvement.
Like an ATM.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
You walk up to an ATM, put in your card, and get your cash. The human teller is entirely removed from that specific transaction loop. So the bank maintains its output, but cuts its headcount.
Got it. So the goal of replacement is subtraction. Take the human out.
Yes. But labor-augmenting technology operates on a completely different premise. The goal isn't subtraction, it's multiplication.
Multiplication. Okay.
Think about a power drill on a construction site. The drill doesn't replace the carpenter.
Right. It amplifies them.
Exactly. It amplifies their physical capacity. You still absolutely need the human to read the blueprint, measure the wood, and know where to put the screws.
That brings up a historical parallel that feels really spot on here. Back when the first spreadsheet software came out, like VisiCalc, and later Microsoft Excel, people genuinely panicked.
Oh yeah, it was supposed to be the end of accounting.
Totally. The prevailing thought was that accountants were entirely obsolete. The computer could do the math instantly, so why pay a human?
But obviously that didn't happen.
Right. What actually happened is that Excel absorbed the tedious arithmetic,
Mhm.
and that allowed accountants to run much more complex financial models.
The software made the human expertise more powerful.
Exactly. Which meant companies suddenly wanted more financial analysis, not less. The accountants were augmented.
And all the data we have right now indicates that generative AI is functioning as the new spreadsheet, not the new ATM.
Okay, let's look at that data.
Well, Peter McCrory, he's the head of economic research at Anthropic. He analyzed the real-world usage patterns of their frontier models. He was actively looking for any observable wave of white-collar unemployment triggered by the adoption of these tools.
And what did he find?
He found none. Zero.
Hmm.
And if you look at the broader U.S. labor market through late 2024, unemployment remained consistently below 4.5%.
Wow.
Yeah, we had historically strong labor performance at the exact same moment that AI adoption was aggressively scaling across knowledge sectors.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there and just push back on this a little bit, because I think a lot of CFOs would hear that and say, well, they just haven't cut the jobs yet.
Sure, the lag effect argument.
Right. Like, if we look at the study and the sources on GitHub Copilot, which is an AI tool for software engineers, it showed that developers using it coded significantly faster and they were happier.
They were,
So
yeah.
if I'm a finance executive, the math seems incredibly simple. If my developers are 50% faster, I only need half as many developers to get the same product. Why isn't that happening?
Because the demand for output isn't static. In the real world, a software company doesn't just have a fixed finite amount of code they want to write.
Oh, I see. They always want to do more.
Always. They have this massive backlog of ambitious projects they've never had the resources to tackle. When GitHub Copilot speeds up the coding process, it's basically doing the equivalent of digging the trench faster.
It's doing the tedious part.
Right, it's auto-completing standard boilerplate code or, spotting a missing semicolon. But an AI doesn't know what product the customer actually wants to buy.
Right.
It doesn't understand the broader architecture of the company's legacy systems. The human developers still have to build the strategy. So when they get faster, the company just tackles more complex projects. The work expands to fill the newly unlocked capacity.
Okay, that makes total sense. You aren't paying a software engineer just to literally type characters on a screen. You're paying them to solve complex business problems.
Exactly. And the AI can't do that complex reasoning on its own. It requires a human hand on the steering wheel to evaluate relevance and ensure quality.
So the superficial, visible tasks look like they can be replaced, but the core function of the job still requires human judgment.
It absolutely does.
Which brings it right down to the practical level for you listening. Just think about your own workflow today. When you open up a large language model to help with a project, you aren't outsourcing your entire brain and going to take a nap.
Right.
You're using it to synthesize 30 pages of messy notes so you can actually figure out the strategy faster. You're using it to get past the terror of the blank page.
But imagine a scenario where your executive team doesn't understand that dynamic.
Oh boy.
What happens when a massive corporation fundamentally misdiagnoses the technology? They look at the tool you use to synthesize notes, and they assume the tool can just write the strategy itself.
They treat an augmentation tool like a replacement tool.
Exactly. And the result of that misdiagnosis is severe organizational damage, primarily because they destroy something called tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge. Okay, let's dig into that because I really don't think it gets talked about enough in the AI hype cycle. What is it?
Tacit knowledge is the unwritten, undocumented institutional memory that lives entirely inside the heads of your employees.
Oh, like the stuff that isn't in the employee handbook.
Right. It's knowing that a specific client always gets nervous around quarter end and needs a phone call, not an email, or knowing why a legacy database was structured a certain way 5 years ago.
Stuff you just learn by being there.
Exactly. You cannot capture tacit knowledge in a standard operating procedure document. And more importantly, you cannot train an AI on it because the data simply doesn't exist anywhere in text.
It's almost like the seasoning on a cast iron pan.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like you can't just buy a fully seasoned pan straight out of the box. That nonstick surface only builds up over years of continuous use, cooking meal after meal.
Right.
If you take steel wool and scrub it all away, which is essentially what a mass layoff does, you don't just lose the meals you were cooking, you lose the seasoning. You have to start completely from scratch.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. When companies aggressively cut headcount to fund AI licenses, they are scrubbing away their institutional memory.
And we've seen this happen recently, right?
We have. Let's look at the financial services sector between 2023 and 2024. A number of large banks bought heavily into the replacement narrative. They implemented massive AI-driven workforce reductions, particularly in back-office functions and complex customer service.
And I'm guessing on paper, for maybe one quarter, their profit margins probably looked fantastic.
Oh, for one quarter, they were thrilled.
Mm.
But the operational reality hit almost immediately. They suffered severe quality degradation.
So,
Well, think about a customer whose account gets flagged for fraud because they're traveling through 3 different countries in a week. An AI system might just lock the account based on a rigid parameter.
makes sense for a machine.
Right. In the past, a seasoned back-office worker could look at the context, see the customer's history, and resolve it in 5 minutes. With the humans gone, those complex edge case problems just piled up. Customer satisfaction plummeted. And regulatory compliance issues spiked because the AI lacked the judgment to handle nuanced financial disputes.
So the AI essentially generated this mountain of complex errors, and there was literally nobody left in the building who knew how to fix them.
Exactly. And that leads to what the researchers call a hiring, then firing, then rehiring cycle.
Oh man, that sounds expensive.
Incredibly, the assumed cost savings completely evaporated. The banks had to spend heavily on system maintenance, error correction, and desperately rehiring expensive consultants to fix the messes the AI created.
Does the broader data back that up?
It does. The broader research data confirms this exact trend. Enterprise AI projects that focus purely on cost reduction and automation hit their expected ROI only 30% of the time.
Only 30%.
Yeah. But projects focused on capability enhancement, augmenting the workforce to do new things, meet their targets 65% of the time.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the damage isn't just on the corporate balance sheet. The psychological toll of this boardroom dogma is creating a crisis of confidence. A 2024 Pew survey found that 60% of knowledge workers are anxious about their job security because of AI.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that ambient anxiety is incredibly destructive. I mean, even if a company isn't actively laying people off, the employees are reading the headlines.
They hear the CEO talking about AI efficiencies on an earnings call.
Right, and they just start waiting for the axe to fall. When people are operating in a state of existential dread, they do not innovate. They hide their best ideas, they refuse to help train the AI tools, and they start looking for another job.
And it has a secondary, almost invisible consequence on the future of these companies, specifically regarding junior employees.
Yes, the broken pipeline. This might actually be the most devastating long-term consequence of the replacement myth.
Tell me about that.
Let's look at major consulting firms during that same 2023 to 2024 window. Think about an entry-level analyst. Their job often involves highly routine tasks, pulling data sets, formatting slides, synthesizing basic research.
Those are the exact tasks that generative AI is exceptionally good at automating.
Right. So a partner at the firm looks at the AI and says, great, I don't need to hire 20 junior analysts this year. I'll just use the AI to format my slides.
But how do you create a senior partner?
Exactly. The traditional model is apprenticeship. You hire a junior analyst, they do the grunt work, they sit in on meetings, they absorb that tacit knowledge we talked about earlier, and 10 years later, they have the judgment to lead a massive client project.
So if you automate away the junior tier to save short-term cash, you are burning the ladder behind you.
Where do your experienced veterans come from in 2034? You cannot prompt engineer 10 years of industry context into someone.
It's absurd when you map it out like that. They traded their entire future leadership pipeline to save a few bucks on data entry today. So if the replacement strategy is failing operationally, financially, and culturally, we have to look at the organizations that are actually getting it right. Because you obviously can't ignore AI. It is a transformative technology.
Now you have to use it.
But the playbook for success seems to hinge entirely on transforming the people rather than reducing them.
It does. And the very first step in that playbook is radically transparent communication. You have to actively dismantle the fear that the AI is coming for their jobs.
Microsoft is a brilliant case study here from the sources. When they rolled out their internal Copilot AI, they didn't just, quietly install it on everyone's computer and send a generic HR memo.
No, they didn't hide it.
They held regular, massive town halls. Leadership stood up and explicitly stated that the singular goal of the rollout was productivity enhancement, not headcount reduction.
Yeah.
They wanted to eliminate the drudgery of the workday.
But they didn't just talk. They built the infrastructure to prove it. They set up direct feedback channels so employees could actively report when the AI was hallucinating or making their job harder.
That's smart.
It is. By making the employees the critics and the pilots of the system, they completely remove the existential threat. When workers aren't terrified, adoption rates skyrocket.
And once you have that trust, you can actually start changing the way the company operates. This leads to strategic workforce planning, which is about looking at how human and AI capabilities combine and literally inventing entirely new ways to work.
Kaiser Permanente provides a phenomenal example of this. They rolled out advanced AI diagnostic tools and clinical decision support systems. But rather than assuming the AI would replace clinical staff, they analyzed the new workflow.
And what did they find?
They realized that an AI might be able to spot a microscopic anomaly on an X-ray, But the AI has absolutely no idea that the patient is an 80-year-old who has explicitly requested palliative care rather than invasive surgery.
Because the AI just outputs raw data. It doesn't understand the human context.
Exactly. So Kaiser created an entirely new job category, the clinical AI
I
coordinator.
love that title.
Right? These are highly experienced nurses whose specific role is to act as the bridge. They take the AI's diagnostic recommendations and interpret them through the lens of a real, complex human patient. They contextualize the data for the broader medical team.
And Deloitte took a very similar approach in the consulting world.
They did. They mapped out their workflows, identified the high-value human advisory skills, and created new AI-fluent consulting pathways. They didn't shrink their workforce. They reshaped it to be more valuable.
But reshaping a workforce requires a staggering amount of training. We aren't just talking about a mandatory 30-minute click-through video on a Friday afternoon. The sources show massive, multi-million-dollar investments in capability building.
The scale is unprecedented. I mean, Amazon Web Services committed $1.2 billion to reskill over 21 million people globally in cloud and AI capabilities.
Over $1 billion.
Yeah. And Siemens built entire AI training academies inside their factories. They realize that if an AI-enabled robot is constantly adjusting its production speed based on global supply chain data, the human factory worker needs to understand why the machine is behaving that way.
Right, so they can collaborate with it safely.
Exactly.
And JP Morgan Chase invested $350 million in data literacy and AI reskilling for everyone from their quantitative analysts down to their customer service reps. Let's be real. Companies do not drop $1 billion to train employees they are planning to fire next quarter.
They do not.
They are investing heavily in human-AI collaboration.
However, we do have to acknowledge economic reality here. Even with the best AI strategy, markets shift, companies merge, and sometimes restructuring is unavoidable.
Sure.
But when an organization absolutely must reduce its workforce, the research highlights a critical concept called procedural justice. How you handle the exit determines the survival of the company.
Unilever is the gold standard in the research on this. When they went through a massive supply chain transformation between 2021 and 2023, they knew some roles were going to become obsolete.
But they handled it completely differently.
Totally differently. They didn't lock people out of their email accounts with zero warning. They gave the affected employees 12 months of advance notice. A full year.
That's practically unheard of.
Right. And they offered extensive internal retraining, generous severance, and outplacement support to help them land on their feet elsewhere.
And the brilliance of procedural justice isn't just about doing the ethical thing for the departing employees. It's a strategic imperative for the survivors, the employees who remain.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you handle a layoff with cruelty or silence, the retained employees lose all faith in the organization. Their productivity plummets, their innovation stops, and your top talent immediately starts interviewing at your competitors. Unilever preserved the trust of the survivors by treating the departing workers with immense respect.
Okay, so we have a solid playbook for handling the people side of this transition today. But the technology itself is moving at an unbelievable speed. The capabilities of these models change every few months. How do organizations protect themselves against future uncertainties? What happens when the AI hallucination isn't just a funny typo, but a critical business error?
This brings us to governance and adaptability. The fundamental error most companies make is centralizing AI oversight. They hand it entirely to the IT department.
Right, they treat it just like regular software.
Exactly. But the IT department doesn't know the nuances of European tax law or the structural load requirements of a suspension bridge. The solution is distributed governance. You have to involve the diverse stakeholders who actually use the tools on the front lines.
Bank of America modeled this perfectly. They created a responsible AI council, but they didn't just put executives in a room. They embedded AI ethics champions directly into the individual business units.
Because the people doing the actual work are the ones monitoring the tool.
Yes. Novartis does the same thing in their pharmaceutical R&D. They use cross-functional boards to review the AI before it goes live. Because if an AI hallucinates a chemical interaction in drug development, the consequences are literally life-threatening.
And because the stakes are that high, you need a robust knowledge infrastructure to catch the mistakes before they cascade.
I think the most brilliant example of this in the sources comes from Bechtel, the massive engineering and construction firm. They deployed AI to assist with complex project planning, but they actively built what they call failure mode libraries.
I love this concept.
It's so smart. They systematically documented every single instance where the AI gave a bad recommendation, like failing to account for local soil composition or miscalculating a supply chain delay. They didn't hide the failures, they cataloged them.
That is a dual investment.
Mm.
They use that failure library to train the machine learning system to be better, but more importantly, they use it to train the human project managers.
Mhm.
They are teaching their human experts what an AI blind spot looks like.
It completely reminds me of an airplane's dashboard. Think about the check engine light or the turbulence warnings. When we invented autopilot, we didn't tell the human pilots to go take a nap in first class.
Right, you still need the pilot.
We built a system that loudly and clearly tells the human when the machine is confused or when the sensors are failing. Bechtel's failure mode library is basically an organizational check engine light. It guarantees that the human stays actively in the loop.
This raises an important question, though. How do you maintain that level of safety and caution without becoming so rigid that you can't innovate?
That's the balance, right?
Yeah, the answer is adaptive capacity. You have to run parallel experiments.
Meta takes this approach with what they call modular implementation. They don't bet the whole company on one massive AI rollout. They run dozens of pilot programs simultaneously, track the data obsessively, and they kill the ones that fail while scaling the ones that work.
And BMW takes it even further on the factory floor. They actually run parallel assembly lines.
Wait, really?
Yes. One line is human-operated, the other is AI-augmented. They directly compare the output, and if the AI system fails or hallucinates a weird assembly step, they can pivot instantly without shutting down the entire manufacturing plant.
That's incredible.
And perhaps the ultimate way to maintain adaptability is to anchor the technology to a human-centric purpose. Look at REI. When the outdoor retailer deployed AI recommendation systems, they didn't frame it as a way to ruthlessly maximize checkout numbers.
What did they do instead?
They anchored it to their core mission, sustainability. The AI was trained to help customers find exactly the right gear for their specific environment, reducing the likelihood of returns and minimizing environmental waste.
Oh, that's completely changing the narrative.
Exactly. When you make the AI about purpose rather than just pure cost extraction, you build immense trust with the employees who have to use it.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all these threads together, from the anthropic labor data to the cast iron pan of tacit knowledge to the failure mode libraries at Bechtel, the core takeaway for you listening is crystal clear. AI is not a frictionless replacement for human labor.
No, not at all.
It is a messy, powerful tool for workforce transformation. The organizations that thrive in this decade will be the ones that double down on human-AI collaboration.
And the organizations that view their employees merely as expensive line items to be erased will find themselves hollowed out. They will lose their tacit knowledge, they will break their leadership pipelines, and they will lack the adaptive capacity to survive the next inevitable shift in the market.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over as we wrap up today. If generative AI is rapidly mastering the routine, the analytical, and the synthetic tasks of the knowledge economy, well, then perhaps the most scarce and valuable career skills of the 2030s won't be technical at all.
It's a fascinating shift.
Right. If the algorithm can write the Python code and summarize the legal briefs, then the ultimate job security lies in the hyperhuman soft skills, deep empathy, complex ethical negotiation, and the ability to build genuine trust with another human being. Those are the things a machine fundamentally cannot replicate.
The human element becomes the premium.
Exactly. The magic trick isn't making the human disappear. The magic trick is giving the human better tools. Keep diving deep, keep questioning the prevailing narratives, and we'll catch you next time.